Hello friends, welcome to today's session on interval concept. So maths is a symbolic language, so many times we get confused in the symbol, and this is also somewhat like understanding the symbolic language of the mathematics. So there are four types of intervals. The first one is closed interval. So let's understand what is closed interval. So in symbolically, they will provide you the value of x, let's say, or value of y or any other variable. So let's say this x belongs to this interval a comma b. So let's try to find what is the meaning of this. So friends, this type of bracket indicates it's a closed interval. So you have to read this as closed interval. But let's try to find the meaning of this x belongs to a comma b, closed interval a comma b. So what is the meaning of it? So it's very simple. So on the number line, let's say somewhere this a lies somewhere here, let's say b lies somewhere here. Then if x belongs to this closed interval a comma b, means you have to consider the value of x as a, then you have to consider the value of x as a b, even you have to consider all the in-between values in between values of a and b for the x. So this x, so here if it is a closed interval, then you must include this a, then you have to include this b, and you have to include all the values between a and b. This is actually meaning of this closed interval. So there is one more way of presenting a closed interval. If you want, you can write down this thing in this way: a is less than or equal to x, less than or equal to b. So that's why in my initial first minute, so I already talked about this very important thing, that is maths is a symbolic language and you must be able to read the symbol. So this way of representing the interval or the value of x or way of this presentation is exactly similar. So this indicates this x lies somewhere between a and b, but make sure it's a closed interval. So x also takes a value of a as well as value of b. So x takes a value of a, x takes a value of b, even x takes all the in-between values of a and b, and this is a one more way of presenting it. Let's try to understand this thing with one simple example. Let's say I represent this as x belongs to the closed interval, let's say -2 to +3. So friends, what is the meaning of this? So there is a one more way of representing this first of all. So -2 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 3. So they want to specify the interval for this x. So here, let's say 0 lies somewhere here, then -1, -2, 1, 2, and 3. So friends, so what is the meaning of this closed interval -2 to 3? So you have to consider this value of -2. Please consider the value of 3, or even you have to consider all the in-between values of -2 and 3. So x takes -2 value, even x can take a 3 value, or all the x values which lies between -2 to 3 comes under this closed interval -2 to 3, or see this representation where -2 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 3. So this is the type number 1 where it's a closed interval, right? So in type number 2, let's cover open interval. So let's try to understand what is open interval. So maths is a symbolic language. So this is called closed bracket. But here, if you observe, they will provide you the x which belongs to this interval a comma b. So see, I changed the pattern of the bracket. So this is called open interval. So understand this. This is called open interval, or there's one more way of representing it. So a is less than, x is less than b. So this presentation is called open interval, or x belongs to the open interval a comma b. So what is the meaning of that on the number line? So let's say this is the number line for the x. Let's say x somewhere lies, a value lies somewhere here, b value lies somewhere here. So according to them, this x, so observe here, there is no equality present here. So as it was present in the closed interval, if you observe in closed interval, it was with the equality also. There was this symbol present. So Please understand this. Here in this open interval, there is no such a equality symbol exists, means you have to exclude the value of A, then please exclude even the value of B, but X can take any value between A and B. So the meaning of this thing is X can take a value between A and B, but not A and B. This is the meaning of open interval. Let's try to understand this thing with simple example. So let's say X belongs to the open interval -2, 3, or the meaning of one more way of presenting it is -2 is less than X is less than 3. So the how to represent this thing on number line. So let's say this is the number line which represents the values of X. So let's say 0 lies somewhere here, -1, -2, then 1, then 2, then 3. Okay, so what is the meaning of this? So try to understand, if it is an open interval, then X cannot take a value of -2, which is the first value. Even X cannot take the value of this last digit, that is 3. So only in between values between -2 to 3 are allowed, like -1, 0, 1, 2, or if you want you can take few rational numbers, but make sure that X lies between -2 to 3. So this is the meaning of the open interval, and as I already told you, this maths is a symbolic language. So try to understand in examination to represent the open interval, they might give you the way of presentation as this one or might be this one. So there are two ways to represent an open interval. Okay, then the third type of interval is called semi-closed interval. So what is semi-closed interval? So as the name suggests, it's a partially closed, or we can say partially open. So this is partially closed or partially open. So let's try to understand with one example. Let's say here I'm mentioning X belongs to, understand this interval. See, if you observe, this is closed on one side, but it is open on another side. So we can say this is closed on the side of A, but it is open on the side of B. So it's not a fully closed or fully open, but since we started with the closed position, therefore we say it's a semi, because it's a partially closed, because it is closed on one side but open on another side or at the end of the interval. Therefore it is a semi. The word semi means it's a partial, and closed, as we started with this closed thing, therefore they named it as semi-closed interval. So how will you represent the semi-closed interval on a number line? Let's say this is the number line representing the values of X. So let's say A lies somewhere here, B lies somewhere here, and since it is closed on the side of A, so you can consider the value of X as A, which is allowed. But if you observe, it is open on B side, means B value that you have to neglect for the X. So here, this is very important, friends. This is semi-closed interval where it is closed on A side and open on B side. So here you have to consider X is equal to A. You can consider X equal to A, but you cannot consider X equal to B. But you can consider all the in-between values of X between A and B. So here you can consider A, you cannot consider B, but you can consider all the values between A and B for the X. So here, this is the way that we represent a semi-closed interval. So let's understand this thing with a semi value. Let's say it's a semi-closed interval -2 to 3. So understand this is closed on -2 side and it is open on 3 sides. So right. So how will you draw this thing on a number line? Very simple. So this is very important concept, friends. You cannot neglect. Maths is a symbolic language. So you must know the meaning of this interval. So right. Okay. So here, since it is closed on -2 side, so means we can consider -2 as a value of X. Since it is open on 3 side, we cannot consider 3 as a part of the interval or as a part of the X value, but you can consider all the in-between values of -2 and 3. So X can take a value -2, X cannot take a value of 3, but you can consider all in-between values like -1, 0, 1 and 2 for this interval. So this is called semi-closed interval. So why it is named in this way? Because if you observe this presentation, here it started with the closed position, but it ended with the open position. We always gives the importance to the starting point. So it's a closed one. So that's why we named it as semi-closed interval. Okay, and the last one in the list of interval is, obviously you can guess it very easily. So I hope every one of you is ready with your answer. So this is called semi-open interval. So what is semi-open interval? So this is the way that they will represent a semi-interval open. So let's say x belongs to this interval a comma b. So please observe this thing. So I started with the open interval, but we ended with this closed bracket. So right. So here if you observe, this is open, and this last at this end point of this interval it is closed one, right? As we already discussed, they always gives importance to the starting point, which is open, so, and which is a partially open. So not entirely it is not open, or even entirely it is not closed, but it's a partially open. So it started with the open position, therefore a semi word, and we always gives importance to the starting point in naming this type of interval. So they mentioned it as semi-open interval. So right. Okay, so let's understand this thing with the simple example. Or before that, let's try to understand this on a number line. So let's say this is a number line for the x, and here I'm mentioning the value of a, value of b, and if you observe here, it is open on a side. You means you cannot consider value of x as a, but you can consider value of x as a b, because if you observe, it is closed on b side, and all the in-between values are allowed for this x. So x cannot take a value of a, but you can take a value of b for the x, and all the in-between values of a and b are allowed for this semi-open interval. So let's understand with this simple example. Let's say this x belongs to this semi-open interval -2 to 3. So are you observing? So here we started with open bracket and we ended with closed one. So since we started with open, so that's why it is called semi-open interval. And you will plot this thing on a number line. So let's say this is the number line for the x. 0 somewhere lies here, -1, -2, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, so if you observe here, it is open on -2 sides, means we cannot consider -2 as a value of x, but it is closed on this 3 sides, so we can consider value of x equal to 3, and all the in-between values are also you can consider for this x. So x can take all in-between values of -2 to 3, but we cannot consider -2, but we can consider this 3. So this is the meaning of that, and the way there is a one more way of presenting it. So x is, so see this same open interval, semi-open interval, we can represent that in this way: -2 is less than x is less than or equal to 3. Try to understand this presentation. So here if you observe, I neglected the equality on -2 side, but I consider the equality on 3 side, and all the in-between values are allowed for this x. So this is the way that they represent. So there are two ways in which they can represent this semi-open interval, either this way, or this is the one more way of presenting semi-open interval. So right, so let's try to write even this symbolic form. So here if you observe, I can mention this semi-open interval in this way: a is less than x is less than or equal to b. So this is the one more way of presenting semi-open interval. So it is open on a side, but it is, if you observe, closed on b side. Okay, so what about this symbolic presentation? So let me check how many of you can write down this thing very carefully. So please try to represent this thing in another form. See, this is the one way of representing the thing. So right, but we can represent this thing in one more way. Let's say x is less than or equal to a c. I am considering the equal to sign because of this closed bracket, but I am neglecting this value of b in equality as it is open on b side. So this is called semi-closed interval, and this is one more way of presenting a semi-closed interval. For this example, let's say with these values, we can represent it as -2 less than or equal to x or less than 3. So please observe very carefully. So the same semi-closed interval we can represent in this way also. So there are always two ways in which we can represent this kind of intervals. So this is the one possibility, and this is one more. So if you observe with this example, this is a one way of presenting semi-closed interval, and this is one more way of presenting the same closed intervals, right? So here we covered 4 different intervals. I hope every one of you got this concept. It's very simple, but maths is a symbolic language, and most of the time students get confused because of the given symbol. So don't get confused. The type number 1 is all about this closed interval. This is fully closed interval, and this is the way that they represent. So x belongs to this closed interval a comma b, and this is one more way of representing it where equality is involved on the both the sides. So a is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to b. On the number line, if you observe here, we can consider the value of a, you can consider the value of b, or even you can consider all in between values of a and b. This is nothing but called closed interval. This is the way that we can understand a closed interval. So right, okay, so what is open interval? It's very clear that it's open on both the side. So if you observe here, x belongs to this open interval a comma b. So what is the meaning of this? It's very simple. A is less than x is less than b. So the meaning is we cannot consider this value of a, we even cannot consider the value of b, but all the in-between values of a and b are allowed under open interval. If you observe this example, x belongs to this open interval -2 comma 3. Its meaning is we cannot consider -2, even neglect this 3, but you can consider all the in-between values like -1, 0, 1 and 2. So all in-between values are allowed. So this is nothing but open interval. The next type is semi-closed. See, we give importance to the first word, that is semi-closed. So please start with the closed position and end with open. Semi means it's a partial. Means obviously it's not fully closed, but it's a partially closed, and it starts with the closed position and end with open position. So if you observe here, it is closed on A side but open on B side. So right, so it's a closed on A side and open on side B. So this is one more way of presenting it. A is less than or equal to x less than B. So right, so what is the meaning of this? You can consider here the value of A but neglect the value of B, and you can consider all in between values. So this is called semi-closed interval. Right, with this example you can understand it very easily. So this is a semi-closed interval -2 to 3 where we can consider this -2, but you have to neglect this 3, and all in between values are allowed in all the intervals. So right, so this is the way of presenting it. -2 is less than or equal to x less than 3. And the last one in the list is semi-open interval. So semi-open means you have to start with the open position. So right, and if you observe, it is closed on B side. Since it's not fully open, so it's a partially open. So it's open on A side, closed on B side. So if you observe, this is one more way of presenting. A is less than x is less than or equal to B. So this presentation is called semi-open interval, where you cannot consider the value of A, but we can consider a value of B, and all the in-between values are allowed on any type of interval. So you can understand this thing with this simple example. If x belongs to the semi-open interval -2 to 3, then since it is open on this -2 side, if you observe, I neglected this equality on -2 side, but I considered equality on this 3 side. So here the meaning is neglect the x value as a -2, but you can consider 3 as a value of x, but all in between values are as usual considered under any type of interval. So this is type number 4, semi-open interval. So friends, we covered all the 4 types of interval here. The first one is closed interval, right? Then open interval, then semi-closed and semi-open interval. So these are the 4 different types of intervals. So please remember, 100% closed interval, 100% open interval, semi-closed and semi-open. So maths is a symbolic language. Make sure you understand this symbol in the examinations. And one more important task, so many times you will observe, so write down this as a note, so many times you will observe a infinity. So right, in the infinity as a part of interval. So understand friends, what is infinity? So positive infinity or negative infinity. If you start with this 0 and if you continue taking all the positives, let's say I'm considering this positive values up to the infinite position, means it's a positive infinity. And if you consider all the negative values on this side, you will reach up to minus. We cannot reach up to the infinite value, but it's on that direction, so we can say it's a minus infinity. So right, but the thing is, we cannot achieve this infinity or minus infinity. So therefore, whenever infinity or minus infinity are parts of the interval, then please don't close that part. So right, let's say it's a 2 to infinity. So make sure that don't close this infinity part. The reason is we cannot achieve that value. Therefore, write it as open interval. If it is like a minus infinity to 2, what it may be, it's a 2, on the 2 side it may be closed or open, but make sure that on you cannot achieve the infinite value. Therefore, make sure that infinity always leads to the open bracket. So don't close the infinite side, as it's a general sense that, or you can easily understand that we cannot achieve the infinity means we cannot close that interval. So right, so here we can say never close infinity. This is the conclusion. Always keep infinity side open in any interval. So I hope you enjoyed this symbolic presentation of interval concept. So maths is a symbolic language and it's our job to understand that symbol, or you must be able to read between the lines of the symbols. And in these 4 types of intervals, and there are always 2 ways in which they represent these intervals. Just go through it. Keep this interval concept in your mind. So many times you will observe your final answer is always in the form of this 2 way of presenting interval. So I hope you enjoyed this session on interval. In next session, we will cover such a very interesting part of mathematics. Till then, goodbye and take care.